Man, oh man. All right, Darksiders. So, episode 7 of season 2 of The Boys. And, man, this episode was crazy good. I don't know what you guys think about it, but I was really struck by the fact that there was not a whole bunch of action in this episode, but the storytelling in this thing was so good. And I don't know if you guys picked up on the string that ran through this, how this episode really focused on fathers, but I'm going to tell you, man, some parts of this episode, I was like, I get it, man. I get it. Because my own relationship with my father was not that good. Listen, Darksiders, I remember when I was a kid, my father left us early on. And I remember when I was a kid going in my mother's room and crying because I have a twin brother, like you might know. And it's funny because he looks like my mom. I look just like my father. And I remember as a kid going into my mother's room crying and apologizing to my mother because I thought that when she looked at me, she felt upset at the fact that my father left because I looked like my father. So I carried a whole bunch of daddy issues all the way until adulthood. So I know what it's like to have daddy issues. And we saw that run throughout this whole episode. And that was one of the things that struck me. Now, we're going to get into some other stuff in this episode, but I just had to mention that because, like, I feel that, man. I feel that. And we saw a lot of that in this episode. So we all know what happens in this episode. I'm not going to do a rundown or a breakthrough because by now you've seen it. I just want to jump into the things that just stuck out with me at this episode. And the first part is with Lamplighter. So one of the things that struck me about Lamplighter was like, I was kind of feeling for the dude. Like, man, maybe this cat is not as bad as what he seems. But then we see him in episode 7. It's like, okay, this dude is a bona fide jerk. It's crazy to me that we see really even what's in his heart as he and Huey make their way to Vought, and they're going there to get Starlight, and basically Lamplighter says he knows where he is. And we find out that all of this is a lie as he plans to set himself ablaze in front of his statue in the meeting room. Now, this is crazy, man. Like, and this is what I mean. Like, he was carrying all of that weight from his relationship with his father, and he sets himself on fire. Like, that's crazy, but that's real. Like, how many of us can identify with that? Those of us who may have not had great relationships with our dad. Like, you can't replace your father.
I just wanted to make my dad proud.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God!
Even if your father was a jerk, you can't replace your father. So all this time he's carrying this burden, right, of just wanting his dad to be proud of him. And then when we jump and we look at Butcher and we see what happened with he and his dad. Now here's the ironic thing, right, with Butcher. Butcher is just like his father. Now we know from this story that his father pushed both he and his brother. He wanted to make them stronger.
You can't rely on no one but yourself. You either sink or you swim. And in Landy's case, he chose to sink.
I guess he felt like the world is a dangerous place and you got to be strong if you're going to live in it. And we know that his brother couldn't take it because he put a gun in his mouth and he killed himself. But we know that Butcher was able to build up fortitude to be able to endure what his father did. But look how it turned out. Look what it did to Butcher. Butcher is like his father.
Because I'm about to go into that room next door to your daughter. And I'm going to bash her brains out. And then I'm going to find your 2 sons and their wives and their little kiddies.
Not really caring much. All kinds of emotional walls with all kinds of stuff. And just moving through the world, executing whatever he needs to do without much emotional tie. Who is that like? It's like his daddy. So I love the way that they crafted all of these father stories with a lot of the major players in this episode. I thought that was something else. And even Huey, man. Even Huey. The impact of what his mother dying had on him and how it turned his father into somebody docile, which in turn came around and affected Huey the same way. Let me tell you another story real quick. It's crazy because, again, like this episode struck me so much because I see a lot of myself in these characters. When I was in my early 20s, I was Huey. I was that adult with very low self-esteem, whole bunch of daddy issues from when I was a kid. I was Huey. That was me in my early 20s. Now, I would really consider myself more like MM. That's probably why it's one of my favorite characters in the show, because MM has that like kind of like that gentle side to him, but he's a butt kicker. That's me. I'm a mild-mannered dude. I'm a gentle dude, but I can kick your butt if I have to. But that's not what I want to do. I like MM's character because it resonates with me in this show. But even the same thing with MM. And we know that Mallory's like, listen, you need to get out of this. This is crazy, right? I'll put you on a plane somewhere, take you and your family, and roll. And he's just like, I can't do it. But even she is addressing him from a father or family standpoint, saying just go be with your family. Even Homelander is who he is today because of his father. You heard his father say the boy didn't want to do it. You heard his father say he wanted him to be the strongest man in the world, so he had to take steps to get him to that point.
When he was a little boy, 5 or 6, he was quite sweet. He'd cuddle up to me. He'll have stories about Davy Crockett. You know, I needed him to be the strongest man in the world. So I went to work on him. He didn't even want it. It was for me.
You know that man had love for his father, and that's why he did the things that he did. It twisted him. It turned him nuts. And we know that he still probably had love for his father because his father was still alive. He probably broke his legs, but he did not kill them, which to me suggests that he still has some connection to his father. So to have his father come in court and serve as a witness and flip on them had to be hurtful to him as well. So we get all of these different issues of how all of the different men, for the most part in this show, A-Train and the D, we don't really see that from them, but all of them are kind of talking about daddy issues. So that's the first big thing that jumped out to me in the show. Now let's dig into a little bit of the story and let me share my thoughts about Maeve. So let me tell you something about Maeve. Let me know what you think about this. At first, I thought that Maeve had this crazy plan to take out Homelander, but now that Elena's gone, I think Maeve is totally off the rails. Like Maeve, for me right now, Maeve is a wild card. Who knows what she's going to do? But I think that she's going to do something crazy. I do think that she's going to end up getting it. And I'm going to be mad if she gets it from Cindy. If she gets her head exploded, I'm going to be pissed. Because while I'm not a big fan of Maeve, I kind of respect where she's coming from. Honestly, look, Darkseid, okay, look. I feel for almost all of the 7. They all got issues, man. They all got issues. I feel for almost all of them, except for Stormfront. Except for Stormfront, I want to see her get it. I want to see Stormfront get it with both barrels. Yeah, because I cannot stand her. She's got to go. And I want to see her go in the worst way. Oh, that's a terrible thing to say, Al. You shouldn't be that way. It's so violent. I want to see her go. Don't like her. But the others, honestly, I feel for. When we look at their backstories, you're like, man, yeah, you can kind of see why they're jammed up. I mean, they've done some sinister stuff, but you can kind of see why they're jammed up. So you can see all of that. So it's fascinating to see what goes on here because now the stakes are high. Now we know Homelander and Stormfront are out working the circuit, talking about Vought, talking about wanting more superheroes and all of that. I can't stand her. And then they go and they take Becca's son. I'm like, man, oh man, this lady, I can't stand this lady. But then she goes in there, busts in there. I'm like, who are you? What do you have to do with Homelander, the boy, and Becca? Why are you here? So she goes in there all arrogant and talking all this smack. They have this conversation with Becca's son when Becca's not around. And then the next thing you know, they've turned the boy against her. I'm just like, man, ain't this something? Ain't this something? Talking about, she will have a mom. Boy, I'd like to jump through the screen and just, whew. Anyway, so we see that happen. And then when we get to the end of this episode, I find it fascinating. Now, I'm telling you, this was, at least in part, a plan by Stormfront. I am sure of it. So when we go into the courtroom, we see that the hearing is happening with Vought, and we're watching all that unwind. And as it begins, we see the head start to explode. Now, all of us know at this point, right, this is Cindy who's doing this. We know that. But what I find fascinating is that the bodies are starting to drop because heads are starting to explode, and even some suits. We see Shockwave's head go. So there goes my theory about, I wonder how powerful, or if she's powerful enough to do this to Soups. We know that she can do it to others, but can she really do it to Soups? And I guess she can because Lamplighter was threatened by her. So I guess she does have the ability to do that. But he's the first Soup that we see go by her, I think, unless I missed something in the earlier episodes. So that confirmed that theory. I was like, oh well, even Soups aren't safe. What I also found fascinating was how Homelander, he genuinely seemed not to know what was going on. You can't tell me the Stormfront didn't know what was going on. I believe she orchestrated this whole thing. And isn't it really curious that Edgar wasn't there? How was Edgar not there? The head of Vought Industries? And Edgar's not around? Yeah. This was all a plan. I do want to jump back a little bit to when Starlight was getting her butt kicked by Black Noir. I love that scene, and the reason that I love that scene was for a couple of reasons. I'm going to start with this. The durability of Starlight. Starlight can take some punishment because she was getting walloped by all kinds of stuff. And honestly, like, I didn't really feel like it would go this way. I felt like Black Noir easily could rip through her, but Starlight's got some durability because she was taking some punishment and she didn't come up with a whole bunch of scratches or marks on her face. I did love the fact how Maeve saved the day, and I love the fact how they tied the Almond Joy back into that scene a few episodes ago. You guys remember when the tech was eating the Almond Joy? And Black Noir sat down and he put up the trash can like throw it away. So now we know that he has a peanut allergy as a weakness. And listen, peanut allergies ain't no joke. I got a tree nut allergy myself. They can take you out, I'm trying to tell you. All right, Darksiders, so I got a theory. You see that blood on his face? That blood on his face is a result of the work of Cindy. It either came from Stormfront or Maeve. We'll find out in episode 8. Let me know what you think about my theory in the comments below. But make sure that you check out our latest video for Warrior, which is right here, and I'll meet you there.